welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Hello and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. Today on the podcast, I'm honored to have Alakananda Ma, who is a renowned Ayurvedic expert and graduate of a top London medical school. She is co-founder of Alandi Ayurvedic Clinic and Alandi Ayurvedic Gurukula in Boulder, Colorado, as well as a spiritual mother, teacher, flower essence maker, and storyteller. Alakananda is a highly respected practitioner in the Ayurveda community, both nationally and internationally. She is also an accomplished writer with many published articles. Alakananda has written and is self-publishing her autobiographical trilogy, Patchwork Mandala. The first two volumes, Pilgrimage to the Mother and The Rainbow Bridge, are available and well-loved. Alakananda Ma, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So I am fascinated by your life story, and I am excited to ask you lots of questions. You've had quite the adventure, shall we say, in your life. And it all began in England. You were born in England, and as we mentioned in your bio, you graduated as a physician from London University. But after you graduated, you spent 5 years in Catholic convents and abbeys. Is that correct?
Sort of. Actually, the first part of it was running at the same time. Like, I was living in the convent while being a medical student.
I see.
And then I had to go for my house jobs where you're working 80 hours a week on call, paying back to the National Health Service. And after my house jobs, then I left the convent that I was in, which was supposed to be contemplation in action, because I felt that I couldn't get the contemplation and the action together in the life of a doctor, which was pretty extreme as a junior doctor.
Of course.
So then I went to the other extreme, and I joined a Cistercian abbey. That's the same order as Thomas Merton. Some listeners might have heard of Thomas Merton.
Yes.
So that was in the countryside in Dorset, in the south of England.
Beautiful. And so that was after you graduated?
After I graduated and did my house jobs, my stint as a junior doctor as well.
Okay. And so did you receive a calling into the convent, or was it something that through your studies, you, like you said, you went from one extreme to the other? Did you feel like you needed more time? Was there a calling for more contemplation?
Yes, it was all about trying to get the contemplation and the action together. And then feeling that I couldn't get the contemplation and the action together. So then opting for a contemplative abbey, an enclosed contemplative abbey, where you could even see your parents through a grill, and trying to get the contemplation and the action together in another way, through the only action really being prayer. Though actually I was gardening 6 hours a day for 6 days a week. as it says in Bhagavad Gita, all people are immersed in activity because being alive is a form of activity. We just have an imagination that some things are contemplative and other things are not.
Right.
So I was there for a year and a half, but it was a really big change from doctor and effectively having people's lives in my hands.
Yeah.
As a junior doctor at night, you're in charge of the men's medical, women's medical, accident and emergency, which is the same as ER in America, primary care, intensive care, basically by yourself with some junior nurses, and then being a novice and not being trusted to go at the very end of the line in case you won't switch the light off.
My goodness. So you had so much control in your work as a physician, and then all that was taken away from you.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So how was that transition for you?
In a lot of ways, I really liked being in the Abbey because there was a lot of time to pray and to study. I still do draw on my knowledge of the monastic fathers that I studied when I was in the Abbey. I think there was a huge generation gap at that time.
Okay.
Because all of the sisters had been in the Abbey for as long as I'd been alive.
Oh.
They were aware of the world that I was living in.
Right. So you were youngest one there, and was there a huge number of years between you and the next?
Yes, at least 25 years.
Oh my goodness, yes, that's a big jump. Okay, and they had been living in this closed abbey, so not part of the community at all.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And did you grow up in, I remember reading that you grew up with your parents were of different faiths, is that correct?
Right. My father was Jewish, and my mother was Christian, but not Catholic.
Okay.
I joined the Catholic Church when I was 17 because I was looking for a spirituality that I thought would be more authentic than the Church of England, which struck me at that time as rather conventional.
Okay, so you had this questioning and the seeking from a very young age.
From a very young age, yeah.
And so after you were in the closed order a year and a half, you said?
Yeah.
And then you traveled to India.
Yes.
How did that come about? I'm intrigued by that part of the story.
So after I left the Abbey, I went back to London, where I had been when I was in medical school, and there, my little sister Roz came to visit me. She had just graduated from Cambridge. And she came to see me, and I was doing art in this little box room I was living in. And I was painting these beings with 4 arms and 3 heads and things. And she said, Olivia, you are doing Indian art. I've just been to an exhibition of Indian art. Wow. And everything you're painting looks exactly like the things I saw in that exhibition. You should go to India.
Oh, my goodness. That's incredible.
That's what I did.
You follow that. Oh, I love that. I trust
my sister a lot. She's very sensitive, very intuitive.
Yeah.
And booked a ticket for India.
I love it. I love that you're just following that guidance. That's wonderful. And so did you just go there by yourself? Did you have somebody to go to? Was it just, you were just going to follow your intuition? Or what was or was there no plan? Was there a plan?
I had a little black notebook with one address, Shantivanam in Tamil Nadu in South India, Dombi Griffiths. So that was an ashram that was run by a former Benedictine, who was still in the Benedictine order, but he was leading a different kind of lifestyle by running an ashram in a coconut grove in South India, where he was trying to inform the Christian mysticism with that of India. So that's pretty much where I first landed up.
Wow. And did you stay at that ashram?
I stayed there for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there, I met Sadanand, who is still my soulmate,
Wow,
spiritual companion on the journey.
yeah,
And then he advised me to go to Pune to the Krista Prema Seva ashram. So I went there. I was there for, I think, about 8 months the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And after I'd been there for some time, he arrived there. The moment I met Sadanand, I knew that he would be my soulmate.
Wow.
But I also read his letters home, and I was literally not one of the interesting people he wrote home about. I was literally nothing to write home about.
Oh, no.
We have that phrase, nothing to write about.
Yes. But you knew from the moment you met.
I knew for about 2 weeks before I met him that I was going to meet my soulmate.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. And you've been on this life journey together, which is fascinating. So before we go too far into your journey into India, I want to ask you, because India, of course, is like an assault on the senses. What was your first reaction when you arrived from London town? At what age were you when you went to India?
I think, I'm trying to remember, I would have been maybe 28. Because it was 19. Yeah,
so
28.
this was, you left left home, and there was no technology. You really were taking a leap of faith. The mail would take several weeks, right, to get back home. So you were by yourself with your one contact in your little black book. So what was your first impression of India when you landed there?
I arrived in India on the festival of Holi, which I knew nothing about. So I arrived in India and people started throwing dye at me.
Oh.
That's what happens at the festival of Holi.
Right.
It was chaotic and crowded and moving fast. I had arrived in Delhi, and my first impression was, I love this place.
Wow.
It's alive.
And it seems like you must have had that connection from before, especially when you were painting these images in London that were very similar to Indian art, and you had no idea. So there was something in you that had a connection to India. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. And so then you met your guru there.
Yes. Raghudas
Maharaj, thank you. So so when did you meet your guru, or how did you meet your guru there?
Really, Sadanand was the only person I ever needed to meet in my whole life.
Wow.
Because he introduced me to my guru and he introduced me to Dr. Lard. So he had already met Raghudas, which is a story in itself, but it's his story. Mm-hmm. And so he took me on a crowded bus from Pune to the small pilgrimage town of Alandi, what our center is all named after.
Yes.
Of Alandi. And he brought me into this. There was a big temple there, the Sant Jnaneshwar temple, which is a very important pilgrimage site of a saint that led his earthly life 700 years before, but everyone believes he's still alive in Samadhi and beneath the temple. And Sadanand brought me into this artificial cave around the side of the temple, and this old man wearing only a loincloth stepped out of the darkness of the cave, and I knew that I had met someone that I had been longing for my whole life.
Wow. That must have been quite the incredible meeting and feeling in your body.
Yes, it really was.
Wow. And before we go further, your spiritual partner in life, how did you meet him? You met him when you arrived in India, you said.
I met him at Shantivanam.
Okay, yes.
He's a native Coloradan, which is why Colorado.
I see.
Although I thought that the one country I would never want to live in was America, because I thought people would shoot each other all the time. So it's important to go there. It would be nothing but drive-by shootings.
Oh, gosh.
Because in the UK we don't have guns.
Right, I know. I'm from Ireland, so it's the very same.
Yes. You can hear the Ireland. I had been at Shantivanam for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, and then this being appeared. He was naked to the waist. He was wearing a lungi, like a cloth, tied around his waist, but it had a big rat hole in it.
Oh.
His hair was matted. He was quite skinny, and he was carrying a musical instrument that I had never seen before, that consisted of a gourd and a bamboo stem. And we was doing some singing practice at the time, getting ready for Easter, and he sat down and he started playing, and I started singing back.
Oh my goodness! And you had just met.
The first things we said to each other were song.
That's beautiful. So the connection.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Isn't that amazing? And what year was that? Remind me what year that was.
1980.
1980. Oh my goodness. And so he had been in India quite a while then.
He had been in India for 2 years, barefoot, wandering around as a sadhu, yes.
Wow, wonderful. See, this story is so intriguing to me. So you met your guru and your spiritual life partner. Then you mentioned Dr. Vasant Lad, who became your Ayurveda teacher in Pune in 1980, right?
Yes.
And you were one of the first graduates of Western medicine to take up Ayurveda and became one of Dr. Lad's first students there.
Right.
My goodness. So after graduating as a Western doctor, what was your first impression of Ayurveda and how were you introduced to it?
I was introduced to it when I had actually read a little bit about Ayurveda. In my family, we have the culture when you're going to go somewhere, you study and read about that place.
Oh, lovely.
After your visit.
Yeah.
So I had been reading about India, and that included reading about Ayurveda. And I saw the word pulse reading, and something went off inside me. I'm going to learn how to do that.
Right.
But that was just sort of like, I didn't imagine how I would ever learn how to do that. And then Sadanand, again, I would think I was feeling sick, was how it started. And he said, I'm going to bring you to meet my friend. So we went to a little office off of Lakshmi Road in Pune, and he brought me to meet Dr. Lad. So the whole time that I was in medical school, I never met a doctor that I wanted to be when I grew up.
Oh.
Looking back now, I really admire all of my professors because I learned so much real clinical medicine from them, not like the technological medicine of nowadays. Great clinicians, and I learned so much. But at the time, I didn't want to be them. Maybe it was a class thing. They were all more like upper class people from the playing field of the public schools with A's, and I was not of that class or anything, felt that connection. And as soon as I met Dr. Lad, I knew that I wanted to be Dr. Lad when I grew up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So since Dr. Lad was an Ayurvedic doctor, I decided to study Ayurveda.
Wonderful. And so, I mean, coming from a Western discipline, it must have been so interesting to learn about Ayurveda and the different approach, being preventative rather than treating a disease or illness.
Yes, though Ayurveda has two branches. It has the Swastika Vritta branch that is preventative, and then it has the Kaya Chikitsa that it treats a whole range of diseases. Because, of course, at the time that Ayurveda existed, that was the only way to treat everything,
Yes.
from head injuries and stab wounds to typhoid fever to diabetes to kids.
And so did it resonate with you, just like Dr. Ladd resonated with you immediately? Did Ayurveda resonate with you?
It resonated with me because I felt that it was truly holistic.
Yeah.
Some of the reasons you're saying, like we have the great emphasis on diet and lifestyle, and also the fact that we were treating with herbs and not with things that came from drug companies. Because at the time I was very much in rebellion against the system.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the system just didn't sit right with you. Like you said, you didn't connect. You respected your lecturers and your teachers, but you didn't connect with them.
Right. And as part of my clinical training at St. Bartholomew's Hospital Medical College, I had a 2-month elective period, and I went to Tanzania, to Kilimanjaro Christian Medical Center on the slopes of Kilimanjaro. And everything was so different. At my teaching hospital, we had just bought the world's second CAT scanner.
Wow.
And people had their Cardiff infusion pumps, and we had a linear accelerator, and we had all of these things. And then I went to Africa, and I saw fathers of families dying because they didn't have a tetanus shot that would have cost a few pennies. And we stitched people up with fishing line, and we boiled, we used disposable needles, and we did traction by putting rocks in old paint cans, and it was all so different. Then I came back to my teaching hospital, and I saw that in Africa everyone was dying from want, and so many people in the UK were dying from excess.
Excess, yeah.
And after that, I distrusted the system and the drug companies, and Nestle that was giving powdered baby milk, promoting powdered baby milk, which was causing the babies to die because they needed mother milk in Africa. They couldn't sterilely prepare the powdered baby milk, and anyway, mother milk is better.
Yes.
So I was really shaken by that experience in Africa, my confidence in being part of Western medicine as it was evolving.
Yeah, so interesting. And would you think that then this 5-year pilgrimage that you had in India was part of a searching or a seeking, like you said, for a more holistic approach?
Yes, and for deeper spiritual connection.
Yeah. Well, you certainly had quite the adventure in your 5 years because you tell the story in your book, Pilgrimage to the Mother, and during this time you stayed at temples and ashrams and shrines, and you studied yoga and Hinduism and Sufism, Ayurveda, homotherapy and Hindi, and you also studied devotional singing, and you lived as a wandering sadhvi or renunciant. And you even ran an experimental therapeutic community for Western or psychotic Western youth in Goa, right? You served as the physician to the hippies.
I was physician to the hippies for a while in Goa at a place called Om Yeshu Nikatan.
Oh, wow.
Because we had such a good psychiatry training in my medical school, it was very forward-thinking. I had learned about therapeutic communities. The police were bringing all these hippies who had become psychotic, I think because they had either purposely or accidentally ingested datura. Was a lot of it. So I decided to start a therapeutic community like I had learned about and even done an intern in my psychiatry program. So I did.
So all those tools that you learned were now were now very useful in your new environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was guiding you on this journey throughout? You said that, initially you started this journey and you followed your sister's advice, who you really trusted. And you mentioned that she was very intuitive. And then you met your spiritual partner. And like you said, that was the only person you ever needed to meet, because he guided you as well. But what would you say was your guide?
I think I've always had strong guidance from my inner voice. Mm-hmm. Which led me to those connections, like to listen to Robert and to know that I had that connection with Sadanand, and to know that Raghudas was my guru, and so on. Yeah, and to know that I would study pulse reading, which is really my thing.
Oh, really? Because that's challenging to learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes many, many, many years to really get sensitive enough. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think Dr. Ladd has a really good system for teaching it. And then, like you say, years of practice, and it is a contemplative art, so you need the meditation basis for it.
Yeah.
But that's the way that Dr. Ladd presents it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And then at the conclusion of your pilgrimage, then you got a message from your guru to go to the US and make an ashram for your guru there. So tell me about this, receiving this message, and how did you feel about, you gave us a hint already how you felt about America. So how did you feel about this message at the time? Were you ready to leave India?
So by that time, Sadanand had been in India illegally for a long while. But eventually he paid a bribe so that he could get a legal visa, because he couldn't leave because he was illegal.
Oh.
And we sort of escaped into Nepal. And we did pilgrimage for 3 months in Nepal, which was also really wonderful.
Wow.
And then he was not allowed back into India because he had his quit India notice.
Oh.
So he left from Nepal and went to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
He went back to Assisi, where he started his pilgrimage, that's right. And left me in Nepal for a month.
Okay.
And then I went to India. So I was up on my own at that time, and my guru had left his body. And I was planning to leave India and rejoin Sadanand. We did meet in the UK at my parents' house, and then go to Colorado. It's traditional in India that you take permission. So I went to my guru's spiritual mother, Kamalabai, and I said, I take permission to go. And she said, yes, go to America and make an ashram for Raghudas. It must be called Brahmachari Raghudas Maharaj Devachi Alandi Ashram, which we end up abbreviating to Alandi Ashram for the convenience of Americans.
Yes, yes.
But otherwise it's really long.
Right, a mouthful.
So then I also went to take permission to go from my guru's sister in another village. And she said the same thing. Yes, very good. Go to America and they'll make an ashram for Raghudas.
Beautiful.
So we arrived in America with $50 to our name and basically bare feet and cotton robes, and it was 50 below.
Oh.
Trying to figure out how to make an ashram.
Yeah. Yeah, and what a culture shock then as well, on top of it for you.
Yeah, it was a much worse culture shock.
Yes, I can
It took
imagine.
me 7 years to get used to America.
Yeah.
It's very different, not only from India, but also from the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. No, a big culture shock. So, and how long did it take when you arrived in America to setting up the clinic? I know you opened a few different locations until you settled in your current home.
Right. So, first of all, we were in a teepee in Boulder, Colorado. Yeah, and we had a broken down camping trailer, what we would call a caravan.
By any means necessary. Teepee, then the caravan was an upgrade. So you kept climbing up the ladder.
Because we lived in the caravan and did our ceremonies in the teepee.
Oh, very good.
And then we tried to join a community in Wisconsin. I don't think I'll state what the community is because I don't have much positive to say about it. Tried to join a Christian-based community in Wisconsin. That didn't work out for us, so we ended up in Milwaukee. And then I looked out from my room one day and saw 0 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm from the UK. Something is wrong. I can't be here.
It's way too cold.
It's like ridiculous. So then we moved to Arizona. We tried to live on the Donotham, the Papago Reservation. We didn't know there was a law that said if you couldn't live on the reservation if you weren't an Indian. Right. And we had this idea that I could practice medicine on the reservation. They explained they would love for me to practice medicine on the reservation, but I'd have to have an Arizona medical license, and it'd have to be Native American.
Okay.
Then we ended up living in Tucson for some time, and a half.
Okay.
We really ended up back in Boulder by another of those happenstance things. And so, but it was really by about 1988 or 89 that I had begun my practice in Boulder.
Okay. Wow. So you're there since 89. Well, very well established.
And then in this current location in 1990,
Wonderful.
Although it's a rental, and to begin with, we only have the basement, which I'm sitting in now.
Okay.
To be peace and quiet for this conversation. So we had one room that was the temple/clinic, and this small room I'm sitting in was our room, and then we had like a kitchen living room area.
Okay.
Which is now the pharmacy.
So you've spread out over the years. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you're doing amazing work there in Alandi Ayurvedic Clinic and Alandi Ayurveda Gurukula in Boulder, Colorado. And you say that it's your mission to awaken hearts and kindle the flame of love. Can you tell us a bit more about your mission and also what you offer at these 2 locations?
Okay, so the core of it all is Alandi Ashram. And out of Alandi Ashram, we have the Ayurvedic Clinic, and then the Gurukula, which, like you said, has another nice location downtown for the classes. And we do Vedic fire ceremonies in the morning and evening. It's called Agnihotra.
Beautiful.
Sunrise and sunset. So we're literally kindling the flame.
Beautiful. Love it.
And underlying all of it, that is the real mission, is to awaken hearts, to love. We have to have some kind of vehicle, some kind of way of connecting. So people come to clinic, or when they come to study at the Gurukul, they have in view to get over their illness or to improve their health or to study Ayurveda and have a career, and that's all going to happen. But within that, through that vehicle, the awakening of hearts and the kindling of the flame of love is what's really happening.
Beautiful. And how would you describe that flame of love?
There is no reality except for love. So there are obscurations that come in the way of our fully experiencing and living within that.
I see.
So we want to dispel those obscurations and be our true nature. Yes.
How beautiful is that? And that you have many ways that people can do that. Like you said, they can go to the clinic and be a yogi, or they can and then go on and study if they wish. So it's lovely that you're offering all these different avenues for people.
Yes.
Wonderful. And now you're also president of NAMA. And my listeners are very familiar with NAMA, which is the National Ayurvedic Medical Association. So in your work as president of NAMA, I'd love for you to explain to the listeners about how NAMA supports Ayurvedic education and Ayurvedic practitioners in the U.S.
Yes, so NAMA is really the foremost organization to support Ayurveda as a profession in the U.S. and the first to start it as well. And in order to really support the practitioners, we have to support the education through having standards, good standards, and standards that slowly keep raising until they are in line with those of other health professionals. Bring in a new profession. Then exams. We have a certification board, so people can take exams and become certified. So again, we're trying to establish a real profession with certified practitioners. And the ultimate goal of how we want to support the Ayurvedic practitioners and Ayurvedic doctors is through making licensure a possibility.
Yes, and NAMA is now in the process of forming an accreditation council, right?
Right.
For this purpose. So what would that mean for the future of Ayurveda, and why is it so important for the general public to have this in place?
So licensure in the United States is something that happens on a state-by-state basis. NAMA can't actually do that. That has to be done by the state organizations, which NAMA supports the state organizations through the state subcommittee and helps them to get organized. But the states are going to require, in order to license a profession, that it not only has national exams for certification of individuals, but that it also has accredited schools. Without accredited schools, Ayurveda in America will not be recognized as a profession that can be a licensed health profession. So the new venture, which I am part of as well, is the Accreditation Council, so that we can move towards having accredited schools.
Beautiful. And that is so important for the general public to have access to this, to great practitioners and to this wonderful information that Ayurveda shares with us, this wonderful philosophy of life, this wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah. So, because I believe truly that Ayurveda is what we need in the world right now. Like you said, to kindle the flame of love in the world and to reconnect people to their true nature and to Mother Nature and to each other. Indeed.
That's why I and others work for NAMA with so much passion. I'm elderly. I'm 67. By the time this comes to fruition, I will be perhaps quite old, although it's maybe coming to fruition faster than I had imagined.
Yeah.
For the students, for the young people that are starting up, they should be able to have a good career. Ayurveda and the healing powers of Ayurveda available to people. We don't want them to struggle and sacrifice the way we pioneers did.
Exactly.
So that's why we need to work so hard to make so they can do good things for people and have a normal life.
Well, Alakananda, I know I appreciate what you're doing, and I know all the other people in the Ayurveda community too appreciate the work and effort you're putting in at this stage in your life. You're an elder with lots of wisdom in the community, in the Ayurveda community, and we appreciate all your efforts. and your energy that you're putting into all this work as president of NAMA and into this accreditation council as well.
Thank you.
So NAMA is taking donations, isn't that correct, for forming this council?
Yes. But the actual council as such is formed.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to move ahead with the accreditation process, we have just hired an accreditation manager.
Wonderful.
And that has to be a well-qualified person. Mm. So there are some pretty big expenses that NAMA is taking on in order to move ahead with accreditation. So for that, but really for the first time, NAMA is reaching out to raise funds so that we can fund the accreditation process until it's ready to stand on its own 2 feet,
mm-hmm.
and should pay for itself.
Wonderful. And I will put a link for anybody out there who's listening, who is interested in donating to this. I will put a link in the show notes that you can access, and then you can donate to NAMA for this wonderful purpose. So thank you for that information. Now, I also want to ask you about the upcoming conference. There's a NAMA's conference, annual conference is happening this April in Northern California. Can you tell the listeners what happens at a NAMA conference?
And this conference is going to be even more wonderful than any conference before. This conference, Ayurveda and the Mind, is not going to happen at your typical airport hotel like every other conference. It's going to be in this beautiful space in California, in the Redwoods, in more of a retreat type setting. We won't have to deal with parties and bars and this that have been around us during our conferences, and we'll be out of doors instead of encapsulated in a hotel. The conference is, well, first of all, for Ayurveda professionals, it's a place you can get all of your PACE credits, all of your continuing education that you need for that year. And it's also a way that we build community and we connect. So to me, there's going to be so many interesting presentations and panels and ways that we come together. But the most important thing is that's how we build a profession and we build a community. Every single friend that I have in the world of Ayurveda is my friend because we meet every year at the conference.
Yeah, it's like a big family.
Yes. That's when we come together, we network, we connect, we meet each other, and we learn from each other, from expertise that each of us has gathered, especially those of us that are presenting on the different panels and giving the keynote addresses and so on.
Yes. Well, I'm very excited to be attending this year. I'm going to make a trip. I live in France right now, so I'm going to make the trip in April. And so I hope to get to meet you in person.
Yeah.
And I will, for those listeners out there, I will be recording the podcast from there. So if you can't make the NAMA conference, I will be bringing you lots of information and bringing the experience to you via the podcast. So I'm very excited to announce that and to have that opportunity. So thank you for having me there.
Wonderful.
And so now, as we finish up this conversation, Alakananda, can you tell the listeners where the listeners can find out more about NAMA and the conference, and also where people can find out more about your wonderful retreat center, the Alandi Ayurveda Clinic and the Alandi Ayurveda Gurukula in Boulder? Where can they go to find this information?
So to find out about NAMA, you can go to the website, www.ayurvedanama.org. And to find out about Alandi, you can go to alandiashram.org. That's ALANDI, alandiashram.org.
And I will put a link in the show notes to all that. So if you didn't capture that, just go over to the show notes and you'll find the link right there. And how about your books that we mentioned earlier? Where can people find those?
Oh, only from Alandi Ashram.
Okay.
They're not available on bookstore shelves.
Okay, so you're Pardon?
I tried one time selling them through Amazon, and I didn't like doing that.
I understand that. I understand. So this is an autobiographical trilogy, Patchwork Mandala. And so the first 2 volumes are out now, correct? Pilgrimage to the Mother and the Rainbow Bridge.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm fascinated to read it. I'm absolutely fascinated by your story. It's very inspiring, and I appreciate you so much within the Ayurveda community. And like I said a moment ago, all that you're doing to really establish Ayurveda and establish it as a well-respected profession, not only in the US, but I think worldwide as well. It's having a big effect. So I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing on part of the rest of us in the community to make sure that we don't have to go through the same trouble or stresses that you had to in your early journeys in the US.
Thank you.
Alakananda Ma, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time, and I look forward to meeting you in person in April at the NAMA conference.
Wonderful. Look forward to it.
Is there any piece, as we close up this chat, is there any piece of advice you would like to leave the listeners with today?
Follow your heart.
I love it. That is perfect. Thank you very much, Alakananda.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Namaste.
Namaste. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Alakananda Ma. I know I did, and I will put all the links to Alakananda's Alandi Ashram and the Nama website in the show notes, so please check that out. I also wanted to thank you for listening all the way through to the end, because I want to tell you about a special offer that I have going on right now, a special competition. The spring cleanse is coming up. I have an annual spring cleanse, and this year it starts March 29th, 2019. And I have a competition running right now for a free entry into this cleanse. So please check out the link in the show notes to enter the competition. The competition closes March 12th, or just go to my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com/competition. Also, last week, I introduced my Patreon page for the podcast. If you would like to be a supporter of the Elements of Ayurveda podcast and be part of the sharing of the wisdom of Ayurveda, well, please check out my Patreon page, and you can become a patron of the Elements of Ayurveda podcast there. I'll put a link in the show notes, or just go to the podcast page of my website and you'll find the link there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your support, and